You ever had Kenyan coffee?
Yeah, I've had Kenyan coffee and I've had Kenyan tea, but Kenyan coffee is hard to come by where we go.
What I mean by that for you is, did you have enough creamer and sugar?
The answer is no to that. There's no creamer in Kenya.
So I enjoy just black drip coffee, but I'm a little bougie in most things in my life. And so I do it the Chemex way, just grind it myself, put it in the filter, pour the water.
Yeah.
And our modern worship leader, the illustrious Kyle Moody, gave me a Kenyan coffee, single origin. It was amazing. And it about peeled the paint off the wall.
Yeah, really so I'm the kind of coffee drinker that when people say, what kind do you like? I'm like, hazelnut, vanilla.
Chobani, cream.
Yeah, whatever creamer I can put in there, that's what it tastes like.
Coffee mate.
Yeah, exactly. But where we go, when I say Kenya, we're nowhere near the city of Nairobi. We land in Nairobi.
Sure.
But, and we'll have dinner one night in Nairobi, but we're way out in the third world area of Kenya where no one goes. And that's why we go there, because no one goes to them. And so when I say there's no creamer, I mean, in the rest of Kenya, there's no.
Yeah, like maybe from a cow.
A goat.
Oh, goat.
You won't see a cow.
You ever had goat milk?
That's all I have in Kenya.
Butter.
Yeah, goat everything.
Pretty
in
good.
fact, I mean, if you have cereal, you're pouring out of a box of goat milk. Yeah. So it's
How long
fine.
is the flight to get over there?
It's 2 flights. Typically, we go Atlanta to a European city. It could be London, Amsterdam, Paris.
Sure.
Depends on the situation. And then so that's the first leg. Second leg, we go from that city to Nairobi. It's around 9 hours each leg, and there's 2 legs. So in the air, 18 hours or so. With transfers and with layovers, you're a solid 24 hours. So we'll leave here, say Monday night.
Yeah.
If we fly out on Monday, we'll fly out.
Is that where
Monday
you're going
night.
next week?
Yeah, Monday.
Yeah.
17th. So we fly
I'm
out.
so glad you feel called to go there.
Oh gosh, I love it.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't feel called to go there.
You're basically called to Bora Bora though, aren't you?
It depends on how long
Fiji.
the flight is. I mean, we were on a flight last night for what, like an hour and a half?
Not even an hour and a half, like hour 10.
And I about lost my mind.
Really?
Yeah, well, I was with the peasants,
You were on the tail wing.
34F.
Yeah.
And as I walked by his Delta Comfort Plus seat, Pastor Perks, I just looked at him in front of the whole plane because I was like next to last on the plane. And I said, must be nice.
Yeah, you said it loud too.
Oh, I did.
And did you hear what I said in reply?
No.
I said, keep on walking.
Get out of here.
Come on.
Oh, man. Well, we were both on the same flight back from half a week at the Southern Baptist Convention annual meeting. And so instead of a sermon recap, no offense, I just don't remember what you preached.
It was incredible. It was life-changing.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
If you'd like to check that out, you can go back to last week's sermon
June 9th.
and watch that. I should probably watch. I heard it twice and I still don't remember. But
No pop quiz today. It's fine.
we were on the same flight going and coming back. And I told my wife, I said, there are more middle-aged, white conservative males on this flight than I've ever been around in my whole life.
It's true. It's all that we're on that flight.
There are, and all the Baptist pastors, like, we have a look.
You can pick them
We
out
have
of
a
the crowd.
look.
Yeah.
But it was just, it was a great trip. It really was a
It
great
really was a
trip.
good trip. I got to go to the Brickyard, go see where the Indy 500 takes place. You went with me. That was really cool. And I mean, man, we got to do a whole track tour on the track, stop, get out, take pictures of the pagoda, get down and kiss the brick. You didn't kiss the bricks,
Nope,
I noticed.
not going to.
I don't think you really cared much about the bricks.
Nope.
But man,
I appreciated the opportunity to support your endeavor.
and history. It truly is Americana.
You know what the best part of that honestly was?
The guy,
It was 55 degrees.
it was chilly. It was,
It was
nice.
amazing.
Yeah, it was nice.
I got back last night and I walked, picked up my bag and walked outside in Atlanta. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, you're back. We're back. Yeah, it was hot and humid.
This is gross.
It was beautiful there. I thought you were going to say the best part of that trip was the guy that kept following me.
Oh, man, you were
Yeah.
stuck. And I told the friend of ours that was with us, Jonathan, I said, normally I try and bail him out. Not this time.
I was fine.
Not
he
this
he
time.
was a nice guy.
I felt bad for him because he was just going through some tough stuff. in life.
Everything in his life has hit rock bottom.
But it was one of those situations where, like, there were no other preachers or pastors with us. Like, we didn't know anybody else in that tour we did. But boy, he just picked you right out.
He picked me out. Well, he kept trying to talk to other people that wouldn't give him the time of day.
Here's what it was. He knew you were a former Mormon. He's like, I'm paying him back
Yeah.
for all the torture his
That's
people
right.
have
Be a lot of
caused
payback.
me.
Well, he was nice, and he was sharing, and he was a deep, very knowledgeable race fan. And
I heard him say he drove race cars.
Yeah, he's a mechanic. He's a driver. But truly, his life, I won't go into it. His life was a country song come to life. And I mean, everyone he cared about has either left him or died.
Yeah.
And he literally kept saying, I'm all alone. I have no home. Mm-hmm. And he kept referring to the Brickyard as his church. He said, this is my church, because he's a big car guy.
Yeah.
And he had made the trip to the Brickyard to say, this is me starting over. And he was about 50. So, I mean, it was a very sad, but we had a good talk.
Boy, you took that real serious, didn't you?
I did. I mean, I just appreciate guys like that. Yeah. And, I mean, let's just be honest. It's sort of what I do. You know?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of, you can't escape the calling. You know,
I was happy to be there for him when I could tell, especially. And to be fair, everyone else who was ignoring him, they had no idea about him. They're just there for the Brickyard. They want to see the Brickyard. Yeah. And for those of you who are watching and you're wondering, okay, what's the Brickyard? It's where the Indianapolis 500, the Indy 500 takes place every year for the last 100 years.
Brickyard 400.
Or the Brickyard. Yeah, because the NASCAR race now goes there. It's called the Brickyard.
Why do you think they go 100 miles less?
Well, they're slower.
Oh.
I mean, the Indy car, you got two kinds of race cars. Stock car is NASCAR. Open wheel is the Indy car, the F1, the Formula One cars. Well, those Indy cars, remember, they're lower to the ground. I mean, the drivers are almost sitting on the ground.
Yeah.
And their average speed is 230 some miles an hour. So in NASCAR, you'll hit 200 in the straightaways, but your average isn't going to be 200. So if you were to do a 500-mile race in a stock car, like the NASCAR guys do, it'd be another 2 hours.
What was it they said? Like the first race there was like 1908 or something like that. Anyway, they said the first race took almost 8 hours.
Yeah, because they were averaging like 30 miles an hour or something like that. They hit a blistering pace of 33 miles an hour.
And it was still a 2.5 mile.
Yeah.
But it was all bricks.
It was all brick. And now what's happened over time, they've paved it, but they've left a yard of bricks at the start-finish line. In fact, that brick yard is the start-finish line.
Isn't that interesting how I just picked up that brickyard literally meant a yard?
A yard of bricks.
Because it was 3 feet.
It's 3 feet.
The tour guide said 3 feet of brick. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Well, they're 3 feet in a yard. This is why Americans are the bane of everybody else's existence.
Because our words don't mean anything.
Yeah, we're the only ones that use imperial measurements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because we're imperialistic.
Hey.
So we had a great time. We did that Monday morning.
We had meetings that afternoon, so we had the morning open.
Yep. For those of you who care about what the Southern Baptist Convention does, and for those of you who have no clue, the whole purpose we're doing, or the whole reason that we're doing this, is to help you understand. As Church on Main, we are affiliated with the Southern Baptist Convention. Mm-hmm. We're completely autonomous as a church, meaning we can do whatever we feel like is best for our...
Yeah, they have no authority over us.
Yeah, zero authority. So it's not a top-down, it's a bottom-up thing, which separates us from other Protestant denominations like Methodist, Presbyterians.
Yeah, all of them.
Lutherans, Anglicans, all that kind of stuff. So we are here to just kind of give you a recap. If you followed along in the news, like just go to Google and type in SBC 2024, and you will see a litany of articles kind of highlighting everything that happened. But the problem with that is I did it this morning.
Ooh.
And most of those articles do not accurately convey what actually happened.
Fact.
And, I personally kind of love to hate on the SBC a little bit. We kind of make fun of our own because we do some really silly
You're allowed
stuff.
to if it's yourself.
Well, and I think I told you this while we were walking through the hall. We do some silly things worthy of being made fun of by ourselves and others. But there's so much good. Oh my gosh, there's so much good. And that's what I wanted to highlight today. And we can talk about some of the rough stuff too. But man, you and I were walking through that hall and I looked at you and I just said, man, it's hitting me that there are pastors, like we're the exception because we have a larger church, right? And we're not a mega church, but on the spectrum, we're in the top 10% of churches.
Top 5%.
Yeah, of the SBC, statistically and numerically. Most of the guys there are pastoring churches of 100, 200 or less.
Yeah, I think the average church in America is less than 200.
Yeah, and so man, I walked around and I see these families with kids.
This is their vacation.
This is their vacation, you know. And I talked to a good friend of mine was there leading worship, Charles Billingsley, and he was saying, you know, his dad worked for the Southern Baptist Convention, and he said we planned our family vacations around this event, like
Very
this was
normal.
a vacation. And man, it just hit me like this is life for so many of them.
Yeah,
and so it kind of gave me a little check to say, okay,
yeah, don't be too good. Yeah. In fact, that's why the planning committees who plan where it's going to be, when it's going to be, they keep that in mind. I mean, so there's I guess 3 factors that go into what city will host the convention every year. Number one, they need to have enough hotels and convention hall space for that many people. I mean, at the convention we were just at this week, there were 10,000 messengers there who were registered in the room to make votes.
Almost 17,000 people.
Right. Because you think of the folks that
Yes,
are the
vendors,
kids, the vendors. So you need a conference hall large enough where upwards of 10,000 can be in the room at the same time and not break, like fire marshal codes, right? So not as many cities are going to have a place that large, number one. So it's your major cities. It's your Atlanta, LA, New York, Chicago, Indianapolis, Nashville, places like this. Dallas, Orlando. It's your major cities that can host because they need also the hotel space. Number two, which the convention tries to put it around the country. So it's not always East Coast. It's not always West Coast. So they move it around intentionally for that reason. And then third, ideally a city where, because the vast majority bring their wife and kids, the family can do something. So that's why it seems like every 3 years it's in Orlando, honestly. You know, because there's so much to do there for families.
Or 3 years it's back in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Next year's in Dallas.
No, next year's Orlando.
Oh.
Or is it Is it Dallas, Orlando, or Orlando, Dallas?
Dallas is coming here because the 100th year of the cooperative program.
Okay, well then
the
Orlando,
next is Orlando,
and then Salt Lake.
Yeah, then Salt Lake, then back to Indy.
Yeah, that should be good.
Yeah, the Salt Lake one will be fun for you.
Very.
For a lot of reasons. So tell us a little bit, just give us like a 30,000 foot view of the Southern Baptist Convention for those who are watching and just have no clue. Maybe they don't care. Maybe they do care and are just, ignorance is bliss. Sometimes.
And what this 30,000 of this week or in general?
No, just generally. Like, help us understand.
What is the SBC?
Why are we Southern Baptist?
Yeah.
Why aren't we Northern Baptist or Independent Baptist or
so-
whatever? And then how does our church, it's a twofold question, sorry. How does our church kind of fit into that?
So one thing I try to do with all of our new members classes that we do is I try to give a quick rundown of what is the SBC and what is it not. Mostly because most people have a totally wrong idea of the convention.
Yeah, sure.
So first of all, we are not even a denomination. We are loosely referred to as a denomination, but officially we are a convention, Southern Baptist Convention.
Yep.
So what's the difference? Well, doctrinally, that's where the convention word comes in. But officially, as we said in the beginning of this podcast, we as a church are a member of the Southern Baptist Convention, but they have no authority over us.
Sure.
So every year there's a 1 year term of who is going to be the president of the convention.
Oh, they changed it to 2 now.
Well, no, it's 1 year, but you can
you run unopposed. Okay.
You run unopposed your
I'm
second
sorry.
year. And there's some exceptions where it could be a third year. J.D. Greer had a third year. COVID happened. Yeah. Adrian Rogers had a third year, I think it was. There's a whole host of exceptions to that. But typically it's 2 years, 2 1-year terms. And so, but if that president, whoever he may be, shows up on our campus, he has absolutely zero authority.
He's treated just as anybody else.
It's like any visitor on a Sunday morning. And in fact, if you are a member of this church, you immediately have more authority than the president of the Southern Baptist
And
Convention
you're more
has.
important.
Yeah, that's right. I think so.
Yeah, I do too.
So that's a first thing to know. Second thing to understand is we are, a good way to see it is kind of like we are the complete inverse of the Catholic Church. Here's what I mean. The Catholic Church is top down. So the Pope is at the top over in Vatican City in Rome. And he and his leadership team, whatever, the College of Cardinals and all that goes down from there, they have authority that trickles down to the local church around the other side of the planet. So theoretically, they make a decision. Every Catholic church around the country, around the world, would get in step. In the Southern Baptist Convention, it's the opposite. We are bottom up. So we have roughly 42,000 churches that are in cooperation with the Southern Baptist Convention.
Georgia has the second most in the country.
What, second to Texas, probably?
Southern Baptist churches.
Yeah, it's got to be right. Yeah.
I saw that this week. I thought that was interesting.
It's amazing. Yeah, there's a lot here. So we have 42,000 cooperating churches. Cooperating is the big term there. So we have a fund called the CP, the Cooperative Program.
Yep. And
CP giving is essentially what makes the SBC what it is.
Okay, so break that down for, John Doe, who attends Church on Main, is a faithful giver to Church on Main. How does he participate in the cooperative program?
So for every tithe dollar that comes through a Southern Baptist church, a percentage of it goes to the CP.
Which is deemed by the church.
Yeah, we decide what percentage we're going to give. And some churches don't even give a percentage. They just give a dollar amount.
Yeah.
And they might say, we're going to send $10,000 a year, or some churches are so large, like Preston would, $1 million a year, that comes from the tithers, and it goes to the cooperative program. The cooperative program, this is what makes the SBC phenomenal.
Yep.
The cooperative giving, and we're talking, I don't know, a couple $100 million a year.
This is why I'm still a Southern Baptist.
All of that money goes to support our international missionaries, our North American missionaries, and our several seminaries and other ministries we have. Sure. It funds North American Mission Board, NAMB, the International Mission Board.
Headquartered in Alpharetta.
And then the International Mission Board.
Yep.
And then the ERLC, the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission. Yep. And that is the Christian lobbying arm of the convention. And we have office in D.C. To kind of push the agenda of Christians. And
that made a ton of news.
Always does.
Obviously, when Donald Trump was president, overturning Roe v. Wade, the RLC had a huge part in that.
That's right.
And so, as far as the evangelical community is concerned, the RLC is really the strongest political
Christian lobbying
entity, that is a Christian lobbyist in the country.
For sure. And, your giving goes to support that. Put it this way, too. I mentioned all the missionaries. I pastored an independent Baptist church before I came here. Yeah. They're not a part of an organization like we are. And so if you're an independent missionary, you're constantly raising funds. And every time you're on furlough to rest and recover, you're really traveling the country, generating more funds, getting more people to continue so that you can continue your ministry in the field, whether you're North America or around the world. Same thing with North American missions. If you feel like God has called you to plant in somewhere in the U.S., you're on your own to find funding and so forth. But not if you're a Southern Baptist church planter or missionary. So if you're an international missionary with the SBC, you never have to raise funds again. Yep. You're completely supported. You never have to attend a fundraiser. All you have to do is just, go through the process of, there's an assessment that you go through. And then when you are on furlough, if you want, and you want to take classes at a Southern Baptist seminary, you're able to at no cost. Your wife and kids are taken care of. And not only does the SBC cover your ministry costs, they give you an income, you've got retirement, you've got medical. I mean, they truly, truly take the best care. And there are folks that will say, well, yeah, but then they tell you where to go. That's not fair. That's not entirely accurate. You might come and say, hey, my wife and I, you say you arrive at the IMB and you say, my wife and I feel led to go plant a church in, Mongolia, whatever. Well, it might be the IMB says, listen, we've already got that country saturated with missionaries. So they may just say, oh, man, we're not going to be able to support you because we're so saturated. Because they're being strategic with the money. They want to be good stewards.
Sure.
And you might say, well, I really feel led to Mongolia. They go, well, then we'll champion you and celebrate you, but we're so saturated in that place you've chosen, then if you're going to stick with us, you may have to go to a different country. And so it's not like they say, come with us and we send you and tell you where you go. That's not fair.
Yeah.
And what happens is often people come forward, they feel like God's leading them to a country, the IMB won't be able to support them, and they say, see, the IMB is bad. Well, not necessarily. I mean, if you consider all the unreached people groups around the world, ideally we've got someone everywhere. We're not just super heavy in the Caribbean nations, something like this, right? So
might sign up for that one.
Plus all the seminaries and SBC. So we have seminaries.
6 seminaries.
So there's Southeastern Seminary in North Carolina,
That's
where I went.
Alma mater.
There's Southwestern in Texas. There's Southern in Louisville. There's Mid-America in Tennessee. There's Golden Gate. Well, it's just been recently renamed. It's out in California. And then there's New Orleans, which is in New Orleans.
It's now Gateway Seminary.
Gateway, yeah. It's been Golden Gate forever. And
so the new
changed.
executive committee CEO, president, whatever.
Jeff York.
Came from Gateway Seminary. He was there for like 20 years.
Exceptional
15
leader.
years.
Exceptional leader, preacher.
Yeah, I really enjoyed him.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
Okay, so we have, that kind of gives you a basic understanding of the SBC and why we are Southern Baptist, because we believe wholeheartedly in the mission of spreading the gospel and evangelizing
It's all
the world.
about the gospel.
Believe in the Great Commission and the Great Commandment. And so, that we feel with all of our hearts, and we feel like that's been proven, that is best done through the Southern Baptist Convention. And as far as Church on Main / First Baptist Snellville, y'all, this church is a legacy church in the Southern Baptist Convention.
Very, very strong history of cooperation
and
for all the things I just said.
We try to continue that as best as we can. That's why we go to the SBC. That's why we send missionaries out and send people on short-term mission trips. And, that's why you have mission opportunities that you're affiliated with. And it's great being in Atlanta because you have the North American Mission Board right in our backyard. We cooperate probably more so with the Georgia Baptist Convention. That's the state entity.
Very well led.
Of the Southern Baptist Convention. We've had Thomas Hammond here on the podcast. He's preached here for us.
Multiple times.
So, we cooperate probably more hand in hand with them on a local, and state level. But it's just a really, really good organization that is well led in spite of our flaws, in spite of your disagreements or my disagreements or whatever, with some little bitty issues. And that's what I walked away from this convention. We are no less conservative than we were. And, if you read the news media, you see the Southern Baptist Convention has a liberal drift. And that's not true.
It's not true.
Because what happened in the 60s, 70s, 80s, the Southern Baptist Convention was genuinely moderate, leaning liberal.
Yeah.
And that was exposed in the seminaries from the teaching. They were praying to Mother God and, teaching about egalitarianism and how, the role of the senior pastor is filled by a woman and all this kind of stuff, which, if you look at it just on the surface, you're like, well, that seems, kind of, you're kind of a bigot. Well, it's not, it's just not scriptural. And that's where, we find our, kind of the basis for everything we do around here, but especially the Southern Baptist Convention. We're just trying to stay faithful to the scripture. And in the 60s, 70s especially, that was not the case. And so what you had in the 1980s was what they call the conservative resurgence.
1979 to 80.
In the Southern Baptist Convention. It was led by some guys who were, in their late 30s, early 40s, strong preachers. They weren't, not all of them were, these big megachurch pastors. In fact, most of them didn't have megachurches at the time.
That's true.
But they were just deeply convicted to biblical fidelity and, stewarding the resources that God gave them to stay faithful to his inspired, inerrant, and valuable word. And so you saw just a real change, this real grassroots. And to me, it just highlights the Southern Baptist Convention, right? Like it was just a bottom-up type deal to say, hey, no, we're going to get back to this. And it started changing in our seminaries. And now all 6 entities are led by biblically conservative,
it's of requirement,
faithful seminary presidents.
And the way that they police it, Danny Aiken is a longtime friend of me and my wife, his wife Charlotte, and the 4 of us are friends. And he's a longtime friend of this church.
Yep.
He preaches here for us every August. And we talk all throughout the year. And one time I asked Dr. Aiken, because they have different foundations that give, whatever, $100,000 a year, $500,000 a year, stuff like this. All the funding that goes into these 6 seminaries, including from the CP, the way it works is if the president or just the seminary under the watch of that president of the seminary, if the seminary begins to drift into liberal theology, the funding ends. And the way that Dr. Aiken has encouraged for 20 years people to give money is, let's say that someone wants to give a big endowment or something. He makes sure that it's worded, if this seminary ever drifts theologically, that money is to be refunded to the giver.
Sure.
So it will basically bankrupt the seminary is what will happen. And so he requires it because he wants to make sure even after he's gone, and he's approaching retirement, even after he's gone, that the seminary is protected. And they all have those protections.
Sure.
So to be a professor at one of the Southern Baptist seminaries or Bible colleges, you have to agree and affirm the Baptist Faith and Message, which is the book of our core beliefs as a Baptist church. And so the doctrinal affirmations and protections are in place, and it's for all the right reasons.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I walked around the convention hall and just you can kind of get lost in all the people and all the things going on. And I tried to keep my ears open just to hear conversations that were happening. And by and large, man, the conversation is so positive just around the work of the Southern Baptist Convention, the work that the Lord is doing through local entities, local church. I mean, I'm a product of a Southern Baptist university. And to see, we may disagree on some methodology. We may disagree on, okay, how do we go about doing this the best way that suits our context? But man, at the end of the day, we all agree that, we hold high the supremacy of Scripture. We hold high the sovereignty of God, and hold high the cause of evangelizing the world through the fulfillment of the Great Commission. And the Great Commandment, really. And I heard that a lot this week, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. And that was, that was a huge takeaway for me through this convention. And so I wanted to kind of get your head around. I got a few notes. If you Google it, you're going to see a few things. Last year, there was what is commonly referred to as the Law Amendment. Basically, to give you some background, there was a motion made to add to the governing documents of the Southern Baptist Convention, to the Baptist Faith and Message 2000, that the role of pastor, elder, overseer is reserved exclusively for biblically qualified men. Okay? That's what Scripture says. So why did we need to add something to a document that we already believe is biblically faithful, which the Baptist Faith and Message already states that the office of pastor,
for men,
that we reserve for men. And you can find that in 1 Timothy. So Scripture supports it. So why all this scuttlebutt about, another amendment called the Law Amendment? It was introduced by a guy named Mike Law, who's a pastor in Virginia. And basically, it's kind of this, you had two sides. You had one side saying, oh, now they're just going to go out and kick every woman with the title pastor, children's pastor, women's pastor, hospitality pastor. I mean, I'm just naming stuff, right? But not even senior pastor. That now we're going to kick them all out because the word pastor is for a man only. Then you had the other side that said, whoa. Like, hold your horses here. Let's not get into nomenclature over something so silly that we're already supporting and addressing through the Credentials Committee, through all that stuff. Because if you look at the past 2 years, we have disfellowshipped, as the Southern Baptist Convention, we've disfellowshipped with churches who do support ordaining female pastors. Saddleback Church being probably the largest one. And Fern Creek last year, and then this year, First Baptist Arlington, Virginia, which was the site of the very first Southern Baptist Convention. So, all that being said, twofold question for you. What happened this year with the Law Amendment? Because last year it passed, and in order to become part of the governing documents, it needed 2 years and a 2/3 majority vote. What happened this year? Secondly, where do we stand? Where do you stand personally on that amendment? And why did you support said outcome?
Well, the reason it failed, or it just didn't carry, was because it just didn't receive the 2/3 vote. To be fair, it received about 60% of the vote. So it got close to passing as an amendment. Where I stand on it is, I would have been fine if it passed or fine if it failed. Personally, I was against it. I was against the amendment, but that doesn't mean that I'm against what Mike Law was proposing. Yeah,
and you and I had that discussion at length. You weren't against the amendment in principle. You were against.
We just didn't need the amendment. We just didn't need it.
Yeah.
I feel like it was a waste. So here's where I am on it, and this is what I've answered to a ton of people who've asked me, even at the convention where I stood. And pretty much everyone I talked to was in agreement with me. So, I don't. It's interesting because the 60% who voted for it. This is one of the things that's good about the convention. There's unity in diversity.
Sure.
It's truly where we are, and so it's okay to have some. There's plenty of wiggle room in plenty of areas of our practice. And the truth is, the SBC does not get everything right the first time. So sometimes we mess up and then we go back and we fix it. The reason that I did not think it was necessary is because we've already proven that it isn't necessary. Yep. And if anyone were to ask, maybe there's ambiguity. If anyone were to say, well, maybe there's ambiguity about whether or not an SBC church could have a woman as the senior pastor. Okay, well, ask Rick Warren if he's ambiguous. No, he's very clear. I mean, we removed him. The largest SBC church, one of the largest churches in the country.
Influential.
Extraordinarily influential. They've planted churches in over 120 countries. When we had our convention in San Diego a couple years ago, I think it was like 75% of the Baptist or the Baptist churches in San Diego were planted by Rick Warren's church. He's written one of the most influential books in Protestant history, truly.
Purpose-Driven Life.
I mean, he's an extraordinarily faithful, respected, influential pastor, and we removed him because it doesn't matter who you are. It matters what the Bible says. And so since he had ordained a number of women and he refused to back off of that, then we said, hey, we love you. We can't be in partnership with you. And it's not because we think as Southern Baptists that we're right. It's because we think as Southern Baptists, the Bible is right. Yeah. And the Bible is clear. Now, there's plenty of people who push back. And they say, well, that was written for a certain time or that was written to a certain culture. But that frustrates me as an argument because one of the things that Jesus did most often is he confronted the culture. So if Jesus was thinking in his mind, well, I would tell them that it's okay to have women pastors, but man, those Romans might get mad at me. Okay, well, everything Jesus did eventually led to his crucifixion at the hand of the Romans.
Sure.
And he knew it was coming for 3 years. So Jesus was never concerned about appeasing the culture. And yet still, the Bible is clear that the office of pastor and ordination, so to speak, is reserved for men. So there are some who will say, well, I don't see where in the Bible it says you have to be ordained. Well, there are plenty of places it talks about the laying on of hands. So we use the word ordain. The practice is what we see in Scripture of the laying on of hands.
Well, it's an affirmation of a particular church or
a particular individual calling.
Yeah, and it's an affirmation of that calling and the giftings that on their life.
Well, and the reason we believe and hold to that is you don't call or send yourself, the church sends.
Sure.
So the church would affirm through a process of examinations and so forth. There's always an ordination council and processes that you go through when someone wants to get ordained at a local church. And so the local church is who ordains and says, this person, we are affirming, their calling into the ministry. So I think it did not pass because, and this is where I stood, the process has already proven itself faithful. We have
we already have a mechanism for policing it.
We have 42,000 churches that are in the SBC, and when we identify a church as outside of the biblical or doctrinal parameters, then we investigate. Yep. We send a delegation to spend time with that local church, see if the accusations are fair and accurate, and then make proposals. There's nothing swift about it because sometimes the story or the answer or reason isn't simple. So as I said a minute ago, if you were to ask Rick Warren, he's very clear where we stand as a convention, number one. Number two, we already have systems in place to protect. Number three, I'm not in favor of constantly adding more rules and laws and regulations. That's what Pharisees do. And so we know what the Bible says, and it's clear. So we don't need to keep adding layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of regulations. We know what it means. Now, does that mean that we're in 100% lockstep? No. But when we find that there's a problem, we look into it. A fourth reason that I was not for it is sometimes the word pastor doesn't mean pastor.
Sure.
So what you and I mean when we say pastor may not always be what another church in a maybe a predominantly uneducated area, college educated. When they say pastor, they're not looking to nuance words with pastor, minister, leader, director. And that's what's happened in a lot of churches is we go, okay, take Adrian Rogers' church. I mean, no one has been more respected than Adrian Rogers in the history of the convention. He had plenty of women on staff. Now, they weren't preaching pastors. They weren't ordained. They didn't have the word pastor. They might have had the word director. And there's a ton of churches, including ours, that have that. So we can affirm that women are involved in ministry. Now, there's an office they're not permitted to because of the Scripture. The Bible says it, not us. We just affirm Scripture. So if we were to treat everything as equal, then it could be perceived that someone in that role could be removed. Now, the proponents of the law amendment were saying that's not true. And I agree that they're not lying, right? I agree with them. But by the time it gets down to a third level, kind of like the telephone game, there's no telling how it's going to be perceived. And then lastly, and this is the one of the biggest problems I had with this amendment, for over for about 150 years now, it's the churches that have held the entities accountable. So if the ERLC steps out of line or NAM steps out of line, the messengers come together, all 10,000 or so of us, and we hold them accountable for them messing up.
And there's usually something that happens every year where somebody gets up and says, I don't agree with this that you're doing. I vote to get rid of you, Yeah,
and so we started the process. Yeah. Well, this law amendment would have changed it, and it would have put entities in charge of churches, and we're not okay with that.
Scary place to be.
Yeah, we're not okay with that. That would have been a brand new precedent. And so those were 5 core reasons. Now, of course, we all across the denomination, across the convention, we all affirm the senior pastor preaching role is a role that the Bible gives to men. Yep. Just didn't feel the amendment was necessary. So if folks are wondering what was going on with that, that's what was going on with it. Now, listen, had it have been 2/3 majority in approval, okay, fine. Nothing would have changed. That's the thing. Nothing would have changed
for us anyway.
And that's why we were all saying, why are we doing it? We're wasting time on the floor and vote for something we're already in agreement with.
Well, somebody said something. I was at a particular booth in the convention hall, and they made this statement. And I was like, gosh, that's so true. They said Southern Baptist will get all up in arms for a year about a particular subject and fight for or against it. And then the vote is done. And then poof, it's gone.
It's over.
I'm like, that is so true. Which, depending on which way you look at it, it's kind of a biblical way to handle things.
It's fine.
Like, there's a decision made. Okay, move on.
Over.
I could probably use more of that in my relationships rather than hang on to stuff. But that was kind of the biggie.
That was the biggie.
I think there are a couple more.
Whether or not to censure some of the entity heads, that came up.
I thought that was dumb, but
I love their response.
That's just me. Agreed. I thought Ben Mandrell's response. He's
phenomenal.
The CEO of Lifeway. Absolutely spectacular. I just really appreciate it. What I love about Ben Mandrell, he's got heart and he's got smarts. He's savvy,
he's business
wise. He like single-handedly, his leadership has. In COVID, he said this, they lost $54 million in revenue. Now, here's what you have to understand. The Southern Baptist Convention does not give money to Lifeway.
No CP dollar is given to Lifeway.
Like, nothing you give to Church on Main goes to Lifeway because they're a revenue-generating organization.
Just to pause, people will see their budget because it's presented, and they'll say, oh, my goodness, $160 million is given to Lifeway. No, they generate that.
Absolutely.
Through curriculum and Bible and book sales.
And it's proven because what happened during COVID is they shut all the stores down. They lost $54 million. Nuts. They laid off 60% of their staff. Okay, churches don't do that. The entities didn't do that.
They didn't have any money.
So you see what I'm saying? So it's like it's all based on their revenue. So I appreciated so much his response because it was a response out of genuine concern and care for. And
the church will remember, those watching. We had Ben Mandrell preach here a year or two ago. Did a great job.
But yeah, he really articulated his position, Lifeway's position on anyway. So. That wasn't a big deal. The other couple things I wanted to hit real quick. We talked about the ERLC and why that's important, why it's important to have an ERLC, Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission. If you remember the founding of this country, our founding documents state that we were founded as the United States of America to have religious freedom. Freedom of religion, not from religion, but of religion, because the Church of England was so oppressive. Also, taxation without representation, but that's another podcast. I would love to talk about that one. We talked about missions a little bit, but I know we don't have a ton of time left, but I did want to hit this. My favorite part of the whole thing is usually Tuesday mornings when they commission missionaries to overseas, and they have this like privacy screen, and you can see their shadow,
they're backlit,
and they put like their first names and where they're from,
awesome.
or the church that's sending them or whatever. They don't put where they're going because of privacy concerns, because a lot of these people are going to countries that are
closed.
Yeah, they're closed.
Closed to the gospel.
So man, I tear up about that because it's so powerful that these families are committing their life, this season of their life, and maybe their whole lives, to sharing the gospel in an area where they're not well received. 83 missionary families are commissioned.
That's amazing.
This week through the International Mission Board. So I love that. Yeah, and not counting North American church planting, all that kind of stuff. So I thought that was really cool. And it just, if nothing else, man, that's what unifies everybody around the banner of the Southern Baptist Convention, is to see that happening. So that was a big highlight for me. What about for you? What were your highlights? Other than the Brickyard.
Yeah, the Brickyard was pretty
Or
big
the amazing meal we had, thanks to our friends at Subsplash.
Oh, the St. Elmo's Steakhouse.
Oldest steakhouse in Indiana.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was good food, and I'm glad that they treated us
and
to
we
that.
didn't pay for it.
I thought that was kind. I mean, we offered to pay. They were kind enough to cover that for us. And
you offered to pay. I didn't.
yeah, it's true. It's a true distinction.
No, I'll get that. Nope.
Colin's like, no, he'll get it. I'm not getting it.
Hey, man.
I like being reminded each year of the importance of what we're doing in the gospel sense. I like seeing how many and how deep are our partnerships across the globe.
Sure.
You know, a lot of people in the music side of the SBC. I know a lot that I went to Bible college or seminary with, and
it's like a big family reunion.
It is. You just get to see a lot of people that you only see once a year, but you're all about the same purpose, and so I like that. I like hearing the reports from the different entities that come and share what they've done and all that. Things that I would like to see different is, I still think there are too many proposals for amendments and policies that it just drives me up the wall. Yeah. I would rather, I appreciate, once we've gotten to a point of putting someone in leadership, whether it's over a seminary or another entity, you mentioned ERLC, and then we have all the trustees in place of each entity that hold the entity leader accountable. They always know more than we know. They always have more information than we have. And so I don't like it when someone shows up to the convention on Monday and they hear 10 seconds of a report and then they go to the microphone and raise a stink.
It's like a really bad church business meeting.
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
It's like these people have been dealing with it for 3 years. And I'll give you a real example. There was to be the vote for the president that I think Tuesday evening at like 7:05 was the scheduled time for the vote. At about 3 o'clock that afternoon, a guy goes to the microphone and says, I propose and I make a motion that we reschedule the voting for the president to right now, because in a minute, everyone's going to leave for dinner and they may not make it back in time to vote for the president. And this is so important that we need to move it up because right now we have a lot of people here. And it got slaughtered.
Which is fascinating because the president of the Southern Baptist Convention has no authority.
Well,
all he does is appoint people to committees.
The reason it irritated me, here's what happened. The person who's the chair of the committee of the order of business himself got up to the microphone and spoke. And he was kind, but it was funny. He said, first of all, you need to know that before we ever presented a proposal for the order of the service these next 2 days, we spent 2 years working on it. And we have reasons. Everything was done at the time and day that it was done, and that's why we have to move this agenda along. He said, I appreciate you started thinking about it today, but we've been working on it for 2 years, right? Yeah. And everyone kind of laughed, and then when it went to the vote, he got slaughtered. It was like 9-1. It was, but that's the kind of thing that makes me go, okay, sit down and stop. And
my favorite point of inquiry this year was when the new seminary president, Adam Gorza from Gateway in California, got up to present. He's got a great head of hair. And so after the seminary presidents give their report, there's an opportunity for people to ask questions at certain times. Well, this guy made it to the microphone, and he said, I just have a brief question. Dr. Gorza, what hairspray do you use?
I didn't hear that.
And so he said, Dr. Gorza's response, laughter from the crowd.
Yeah.
And the guy who asked it had no hair.
Oh, that's funny.
You know, it's just the irony of all it.
Yeah.
And he just said, you know, I'm a big believer in transparency. I'm a big believer in accountability. But there are some things that are deeply held secrets.
Yeah.
And this is one of the, it was perfect. And Bart Barber, who's the president of the Southern Baptist Convention, moderator this year, has no hair. And he just looked over and just dying
I
laughing.
can't believe we're talking about this right now. But at least there's some levity.
Yeah, which I appreciate. I mean, there's always a little moment when things get, you know, quite tense.
And it's a needed moment of laughter because there is some tension, quite a bit of it for 2 days.
Two things real quick for me. If doubtful, but Bart Barber, if he ever watches this, I cannot say how great of a convention president he was for the past 2 years. Fair, equitable, kind, didn't take himself too seriously at all, funny, just...
You mean as a moderator?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I thought he was a good president. You know, he took care of issues that mattered. But, man, he pastors a small church in Farmersville, Texas. He has a cattle ranch. I mean, he'd rather be on his ranch, you know, herding cattle. But he's doing the work, you know, for Southern Baptist, of Southern Baptist for 2 years. So I'm just super thankful for him. I thought he handled two very difficult years with some difficult things coming up. I thought he handled it really well. So I was very thankful for that, which leads me to my last point, what I want to close with. So every 2 years-ish, we elect a new president of the Southern Baptist Convention. This year we had 6 people running. We had an election, went down to 3. Then it went to 2. And then the winner of the Southern Baptist Convention presidency for the next 2 years is Clint Presley, who's a senior pastor at Hickory Grove Baptist Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. You have some unique ties to Hickory Grove and to Clint. So just wanted to kind of close with your thoughts on the new SBC president.
Clint knows how I feel about him. He's a longtime friend, someone that I trust very highly.
You were on staff at Hickory Grove.
I was saved at Hickory Grove. Yeah. When y'all have heard my story about I went just so the person would quit asking me and I got saved, I responded to the gospel. That was at Hickory Grove. Clint was not on staff at that point. He came soon. Now, Clint grew up at Hickory Grove. And so I've known Clint for 25 years, probably. Yeah. I've known him longer than I've known my wife, and we've been friends for a very long time. Clint, let's see, I was saved in 98. Not long thereafter, Clint came on staff at Hickory Grove as one of the preaching pastors, and he does an incredible job with explaining and expositing the text of the Bible. I was young. I was in my early 20s. I went to Clint and said, hey, will you meet with me and teach me how to understand what the Bible means? And he said yes immediately, and he mentored me for over a year. I don't remember exactly, year and a half, somewhere thereabout. We've remained friends ever since, but I would meet with Clint every week, and we would walk through a passage. He would have me kind of unpack the passage and work on it on paper. I would give it to him, and we'd walk through everything about it. We remained friends for a long time after that. I've traveled with him. I've been places with him. In fact, I got ordained at Hickory Grove. I was baptized at Hickory Grove. My wife and I were married at Hickory Grove. Dedicated my kids as baby dedications at Hickory Grove. Hickory, and my wife was baptized at Hickory. I mean, we have a long, close affection for Hickory Grove and respect. Again, I was ordained there as well. So it was an honor for me to vote for Clint. He's been there for me personally and privately, and he's been there for me professionally, and when he had no reason to be.
Sure.
I mean, had he done nothing to me in times of, you know, where I've needed people to be there for me, if he had done nothing, it wouldn't have changed my friendship with him.
Yeah.
Like, he had no responsibility.
Sure.
You know, but yet he found out about something that we were going through and stepped into it, and nobody knows unless I tell them what he's done for me and my family. So I've got a lot of respect for Clint, and I think he's a man of his word. I think he's a man who I know he's a man who loves the Lord, loves the word, extremely good theology, and a good overall preacher. I'll probably have him come preach here at some point. I mean, he's just a longtime friend.
Yeah. He lifts a lot of weight.
He's all about...
He's a big guy.
The lifting. He's all about the running. He doesn't just lift, he runs.
Sharp dresser.
He's all about the 3-piece suit and the seersucker suit. And so I pick on him about that usually.
Yeah.
But no, man, Clint's a great guy. His wife, Connie, she's wonderful.
Yep.
Keep in mind, Clint and Connie lost a son about a year ago. Well, not even a year ago. It was late. It was sometime between November and now, October, somewhere thereabout. I don't remember exactly, but they lost a son. They have two, Mac and Nate. They lost one. And so he's been through a lot, and he's just a steady, constant, consistent, faithful communicator of the word. Yeah. Good dude.
Well, I'm excited for his presidency. I think, just having him at the helm is going to
I like that he's going to be, he's just calm.
He's steady.
He's just
very
calm.
steady.
He's not the kind of guy to come in and overturn tables. He's just not that personality at all. In fact, he even said as much at the forum, that I forget how he phrased it, but it was something along the lines of,
I don't want to embarrass us.
Yeah, let's just not embarrass ourselves.
Yeah.
Let's just keep things calm for a change. And I think we all would love that. I would.
Agreed.
Honestly, I would like to be, I'm tired of having distractions coming from our convention. I want to be able, as a pastor, to focus on the community, focus on our congregation, and be about the kingdom and the business thereof. And so if we can just keep things with no distractions for a couple years.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Oh, my goodness. Can we just let us pastors and churchmen, let us focus on our congregation and our communities, and we'll all be happier for it and better off.
That'd be awesome. Well, I enjoyed the trip. It's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. Indianapolis is great. The best part of that whole thing, honestly, 48 degrees Monday morning when I woke up.
It didn't feel cold. It just felt good.
It was beautiful. Anyway, this Sunday, Father's Day. Happy early Father's Day.
Same to you.
Thank you. We'll celebrate dads. We got a prize pack that we're giving away. churchonmain.net for that information that you can log on and register, and then we'll draw for a winner. On Sunday, we have baby dedications in our second service. So excited about that. Mm-hmm. Am I missing anything else? Oh, the music Sunday is going to be great.
Yeah,
just saying.
People have been very generous giving to all that we're doing in Kenya too. Yeah. More giving has
Monday,
come in. Mm-hmm.
So so it's
Pray for Amy. Pray for Amy. Pray for Amy. Pray for Amy. She's doing a lot of teaching and all over Kenya.
Absolutely. So, well, we're excited to hear about it. And when you get back, we'll do a podcast.
Yeah, do a little debrief.
Talk about all that. Awesome, man. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you all have a great weekend, and we'll see you Sunday. See ya.